Okay, today I'm going to show how to put braid and braid backer on a reel. I've kind of made a homemade reel tensioner. I'll show you kind of what I did. We'll see how that works, if that's going to be tight enough to go fishing with. You go to any reel shop, they're going to tell you that it's got to be real tight for braid, because otherwise when you're fishing like a big fish, the braid will cut and bite through the line. So we'll see if I can get enough tension with this homemade braid tensioner. I plan on just using this reel for yellowtail anyways. This will be kind of my it's a Torian 16. This is going to be my casting kind of service iron reel. I'm going to put 50-pound braid. I only have 30-pound backer right now, but it shouldn't get all the way down to the bottom of the spool, and I don't think that has enough drag tension anyways to break 30-pound test in theory. And I won't have to, at the end of the spool, I don't have to worry about it getting braided off anything. So I'm going to show you how I do that process and see how that works. Yeah, this is a new, I bought this reel on OfferUp, pretty cheap. It was a charter boat reel that they had used that they kind of sell at the end of the season. It was pretty battered and beat up. You can imagine being used on a charter boat, being used by people that don't fish a lot, kind of abuse it. I was able to clean it up. It seems to work pretty nice. I still need to put some new bearings in it. I've just been waiting for those to get delivered. But even with kind of bad bearings, it still has good free spool, cleaned up real nice. Just an example of kind of the work I can do. This was kind of before I started YouTube. I should have showed the process of me cleaning this reel. If I don't break my legs, jeez. Okay, and I didn't plan on doing another like how-to video, but it's been pretty rainy and windy here in San Diego, so I haven't been able to take the Sea-Doo out. So to kind of get practice at doing YouTube videos and editing, I figure I'll make another video and we'll see how it goes. All right, let's head in the garage. This type of purpose, but let's see how this works. Maybe this could be a what not to do type video. So like I talked about earlier at the beginning, you want to have some sort of backing on these reels. You can see this is pretty smooth. What a lot of people will do is you can take electrical tape, masking tape. I think that's good enough, probably. I wanted to just try something I saw on a different YouTube channel using backing, using monofilament as a backing. I'm going to do that for a couple of reasons. I want to see how it works. One, I want to show you guys how to tie some different knots too. Because I'm going to show how to tie I'm not going to show the arbor knot. There's lots of videos on the arbor knot, and honestly, I don't think learning how to tie an arbor knot is really that necessary to tie on a reel. That's what everyone says to use. I try to always think of, just with my profession, when you think of knots, you kind of want to have a bunch of knots that work well and it can be used for multiple things. So an arbor knot is very specific to just tying at the end of an arbor or a reel. Well, we use, if you fish a lot especially, a very common easy knot to tie is a uni knot. So you might as well just tie a uni knot on the end. It's very similar. You're already using that knot to probably tie the swivels, hooks, anyways. I actually saw this from the guys at Accurate do this. They actually do a round turn, which is just a simple turn around. We use that in like climbing applications. It's called a round turn. It's just a full wrap around the arbor. And then take that and then just do a regular old uni knot. It doesn't have to be like a ton of loops, like 4 to 5 wraps is probably enough, because this knot isn't gonna hold the fish on. If it gets to the end of this line, that fish is probably going to break it at that point. So it doesn't have to be this crazy amount of wraps. I wet these out of habit. If you watch the guys from Salt Strong, they've kind of convinced me that it's kind of useless to wet your knots, that it's apparently, based on their testing, it actually kind of makes them weaker. But again, this is at the end of the spool. Doesn't really matter. Anyways, tighten it down. Like I said, if you get to this point on a fish, you don't have enough drag pressure to pull it in, it's breaking that. So it doesn't, this knot's irrelevant at that point. I don't have my snips. All right, so next part of the kind of how-to process I thought I would show is, because we're talking about knots, obviously this is kind of backwards. I'm using a mono backing onto braid. It's not really backing, it's more of a, it's more to have something for the braid to grip onto. But you still got to do a connection knot. You could probably do a double uni here because, again, it's at the end of the line, and at that point it's not as important. But what I wanted to show was how to tie. What I use when going from braid to mono or fluoro is called an SC knot. It's a good, strong connection. Supposedly it's a very high efficiency knot, which means like closest to 100%. Probably the PR knot, I think, is probably technically more efficient. But this is a good knot to use, and it's pretty simple. And I fish off the sea-doo, which is right there. And so it's good to be able to have a knot that's kind of easier to tie on a sea-doo, whereas I like the FG knot, but it's not super easy to tie out on the water. Another easy one to tie on the water, which I don't think is nearly as efficient as the rest, is the RP knot. It's good. Like, this is a yellowtail rod. It'd probably be fine for yellowtail. It's relatively simple. I can do another video on how to tie the RP knot. It stands for Royal Polaris. My understanding is they came up with a knot. I don't know the truth to that. That's what I was told it stands for. It's like a modified Albright, essentially. Both would be good, relatively easy to tie and quick to tie. But the SC is pretty quick also. If you're into climbing, this reminds me a lot of, it's called a climb heist knot. It's very similar, I think. People say to do 20, and you really want to keep these wraps as tight as you can, because it will slip when you go to tighten it down. The key to getting it to not slip, I think, is making it tight, but then also it is kind of like a prusik, so you want to make sure you kind of cinch it down first before you hold one end of it so it doesn't slip off. I hear people say to go like 20. I heard like 15. I heard 10 to 20 is good. I just kind of go until I run out of loop. Especially on this side, it's not as important about it going through the guides. Just slip it through there. Now it's locked in like that. And then you start pulling tension on it. Here. That's a lot of tension. It's good to have a knot puller. Again, this is kind of at the end. So now if you were to pull on this will probably, because it is like a prusik type knot, this is where it will slip. It'll probably slip off. If you hold your finger here, I bet I can get it to slip. Yeah, it'll start to move. And you can slip it all the way off. You don't want that, because the tension on your fighting a fish is going to be this way. But it is, since it is kind of like a prusik knot, you hold here, it will slip right off, because you're gonna take the tension off all of the wraps by holding onto it. It'll open up kind of like a Chinese finger trap, and it'll slip all the way off. Now this isn't done. Depending on what videos you watch, you know, you do 5 half hitches, a risotto finish, all that crap, an under wrap, over wrap, half hitch, To be honest, I kind of like to just do 2, and then I basically just do I forgot what they call it, but I kind of, it reminds me a lot of a uni finish. So you just do like 3 wraps here. 1, 2, 3. It's kind of maybe even a lazy risotto finish. Tighten that up, slip that down, and that's kind of pretty tight knot. This is on the end also, so it's not as critical how well this is, but you can see pretty easy. That will go through the guides. This probably isn't the best knot for going through guides, just because it is kind of wrapped on the side of it, so it is a little bit thicker knot. Let's see if this will cut the braid. It's cutting it, just not very good. So you can see there's kind of a little bit of a, you know, the mono's in the middle, the braid is off to the side. Now, if I had a lighter or a torch, I could probably melt that down a little bit better. Let's see how close I am. That's pretty close, but it still can catch, especially on a smaller guy. That's going to catch. Like on my slow pitch rod, it does catch a little bit. You know, this isn't well dressed. It's not bad, but that'll work for this application. All right, we're going over the top. So I took the springs out already. It just seemed like it was. Let's tighten the drag back down. That might be too tight. So can't say for sure that's 10 pounds, but that's pretty good tension. I feel like this will work pretty good. Because what I'm trying to avoid is this digging on itself, fighting a big fish, and also braid slip. You don't want braid slip in your reel, because then you'll have full drag, and then the whole spool of braid will just slip. And that's something I can fix if that's a problem with your reel, basically by doing this. But you want to avoid it. If you're trying to spool at home, you know, if you're going out on a multi-day trip and you want to catch tuna, I might let a shop spool your reel. You know, this is for yellowtail. Not the end of the world. You'll have a chance to fix it at home, but if you're on a boat and you want to catch tuna, I would make sure your reel is spooled perfectly. It's just me. I was spending that kind of money on a multi-day trip. Plus, like, you can only do so well. The original video I shot, which I think got a little confusing. I wasn't quite sure how my homemade spool tensioner was going to work, but I'm just going to show you guys kind of what the finished product ended up being. So this is a 5/16 rod. For mine, I have this set up so it goes through one of my shelving. I just shelled a 3/8 hole. This fit in there. If I could do it again, I probably would have went with a 3/8 inch rod, but 5/16 works fine. And I will say, it was easier finding 5/16 inch washers at the Home Depot I went to. But I would think they would have 3/8 easy enough normally. So this is to drill into your workbench, or in my case, metal shelving. That's all this side's for. Just gives you kind of some options. And then I had to do this double nut system here because, I tighten them on each other So that way when I put the spool in and I put tension on the spool, what was happening before in my video is as I was spinning it, it would spin the wing nut, and it would spin the spool tighter and tighter and tighter to a point where I couldn't actually. This was so tight that I wouldn't spin anymore. So I came up with this version, which you tighten these down tight and it locks it in place. It's not going to spin this. So that's what this side's for. Obviously, you make enough space based on the spool you're using. In my case, this was actually an old spool at Squidco, and I had them put 300 yards of braid that I wanted to buy, and they just put this on an old spool. But this is probably a big spool as most anyone's going to get. And again, this homemade system is good for doing, usually the 300 yard spools of braid are fairly reasonable versus trying to buy like a 3,000 yard spool that'll cost you $500+, depending on the size of the braid. So you just make this kind of the size of the spool that you're going to be putting on adding to your reel. And anyways, you'll lock these in place. That'll hold the washer. It's 2 metal washers with the rubber washer in the center that kind of acts as like a drag system. This was a 1 1/4 inch by 7/8 inch cork, and I just drilled a 3/8 inch hole so it could fit in here. I used the cone cork just so that way it fit better in this larger spool. Now the smaller spool I used, this was almost a little too big, so I think next time I might try to go with like a 3/4 or a 5/8 inch to maybe a 1 inch. But this worked okay for now, even with the smaller mono spool. And then you want to make it just big enough on this end that you want to make it just big enough on this end that once you get the spool on, so in this case, once you get the spool on, you need enough room. So this is obviously a much larger spool, just to give you an example of kind of how big of a spool you could use with this size of a rod. And this was an 18-inch rod. And this is where you kind of have to play with it a little bit. The same thing, you need the double nut on this side. So this is probably too much space. So I would kind of do it backwards. Leave just enough to get both of these nuts onto the rod. Pull everything back here. Tighten this end up so you have as much space as you can on this side. Then lock this side down, because again, you want this locked down. You don't want this to tighten on itself. So you lock this side down, and then you have just enough space over here. You can tighten it up, and then I use my 1-pound torque wrench, and I tighten it to 120 inch-pounds, which is, if I do the math right, I believe is 10 foot-pounds. Because they say you want kind of 10 pounds of force on the reel when you're for braid. I don't know if 10 foot-pounds here will translate into 10 pounds of force on the spool, but that's what I did, and it actually came out pretty tight and it worked well, I thought. So that's what I would just go with. I did that on the mono and the braid spool. Probably not as critical on the mono or the fluoro when you're tightening it on there, but it did help leave it kind of nice and neat. But definitely for the braid, you want that to be on there very tight, so that way the braid, because it's so thin, doesn't slip in between when you get a fish on, doesn't bite into the spool. So that's kind of what I ended up doing. Even in the video, it took me longer to shoot because this isn't exactly how I had it. I had springs. I wouldn't mess with springs. The springs are useless. There's just not enough tension. This rubber and using the torque wrench gives you, I think, a better amount of tension, the correct amount of tension. And yeah, this is just an addendum. I wanted to show everyone because the first video I shot took me several back and forths to end up figuring out this is kind of the best way to do it. It's decent tension. Woo. Finally. So that actually seemed to be the right thing. I tensioned this to 10 foot-pounds. That seemed like good tension. For yellowtail, I think I'll be fine. It's 50-pound braid. Again, I don't know if I would do this. Trying to do 100-pound or 65 to 100-pound braid, something I planned on using on big tuna. So that might not be the right solution, but this seems way better now. The wing nuts are out. This is in, I think. Let's go for 20 reps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Seventeen, 18, 19, 20. Put the mono back through that last loop there. There we go. It should kind of look like that. It's almost twisting in on itself. Now it should slowly start tightening. And it already is, actually. There we go. Now it's not going to slip. Make sure you get it nice and tight. Don't pull on this end when you tighten it. Don't push it because you will push it right off. Tighten all the ends down. Here's what I like to do. I haven't noticed any issues with mine breaking because of this. I mean, this is pretty tight. I don't even think you technically need to do these finishes, but you know, maybe over time on the boat, it'll come off. It'll loosen up enough, maybe. I do 1/2 hitch one way, 1/2 the other way, which I also don't think it matters. We do a round turn with half hitches all the time, and we don't care which direction I go. I kind of do that, it's not probably the right name, but like a uni finish where I'll go do the loop like I'm doing a half hitch, but instead of just doing 1 hitch, I'll do at least 3 wraps. You can do as many as you want. but I'd say at least 3. There's 3. See if I can see it in there. Tying it down. Get that locked in. Take your dice or snips. Not the best for braid, but I don't have my fishing crap in here. Well, I do. I don't have braid cutters in here. So this end is probably much more important to do well. This is the top shot end. This is where this could be actively getting pulled on a lot. As you can see, it's relatively small, but because of how it pulls on the side, that mono or fluoro will catch on the guides. So I would make it, if I was you, I would either do short leader, you know, maybe 5 feet so it's not going through the guides all the time, or I would do relatively long leader, maybe 100 feet, so it goes to the guides the least amount. But that's kind of depends on what you're using the rod for. So got that spooled up pretty tight actually. That looks pretty nice. A little bit in case I want to put more on or do a different smaller leader. That actually came out pretty good. It took me a minute. It was quite of a hassle and it was kind of sloppy at first, but now that I'm done, I'm actually not hating that. That's super tight in there. You know, I actually, not perfect like a shop, but for just doing it at home with some, it came out real nice. I like it. I might actually do this again. All right, well, I hope that helped you guys learn something. Again, I'm just doing this video kind of as a, it's raining right now. You can see outside, there's rain. So I've been able to go fishing. I really want to get my first fishing video on the Sea-Doo, but I was like, well, let me do some tackle type reviews. My business is to repair reels and do other type of servicing on rods and reels. I'm actually starting to do some rod repair. I wouldn't say I'm ready to fully do that on my own and offer that as part of my business, but I'm working on it. So I thought this was something interesting that maybe the DIY guys might want to try, learn. I learned something. Hopefully you guys did too. Again, let me know if you have any tips or suggestions, especially I think a lot of family members are going to be watching this, you know, before the real trolls get on here and start lighting me up. Anyways, again, I'm not an expert. Please don't think this video or my being on YouTube is me indicating that I'm some sort of expert. I'm still trying to learn and get tips and from everyone. Hopefully I can pass some that I learned or something I tried on to you guys on either maybe what not to do. All right, anyways, second video. Have a good one.